This is my financial disclaimer so I don't get sued.
Good morning, good evening, good whatever time it is you're listening to this. I hope you're having a good one. I'm going to be going over the data sets, the earnings, the SPY technical analysis, and potentially some other stuff if we have time, maybe like the yields, Bitcoin, precious metals, things like that. And this is going to be for the week of November 10th, 2025. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the data. And I will start this data segment off with saying that currently, and this just broke basically an hour ago, that the government, within the Senate has agreed upon a measure to open the government again. Now, currently this is still just an agreement, but so far, what we know is that there are a total of 8 Democratic, um, quote unquote defectors essentially that are willing to vote to, break this stalemate. You would need 5 of them to you know, basically go back on their word for the stalemate to not be broken. So, yeah, uh, should be good. We should be seeing the government opened again. And this will be a measure that will keep it open until January 2026. And I believe that includes with funding the food stamps and everything else. So very good deal. I hope that goes through. I think it's been ridiculous that this has been going on for so long. I believe 40 days now. So, yeah, just ridiculous. Hopefully that gets voted in and it gets passed, and hopefully everyone can start getting their paychecks again and everything else. Aside from that, um, assuming that the government will open up, I think that's the overall expectation right now is that the government's getting ready to vote, vote this back in and open back up. Um, we should still be seeing some of this data slightly delayed. Uh, it won't be postponed any longer, I don't think, but now that everybody's starting to come back to work, they're going to have to catch up on a lot of data. And that will normalize eventually, but they've been out of work for over a month now. So a lot of data has to be, caught up on. They have to get a lot of older data out. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting, but at least we'll start receiving data sets again. With that said, tomorrow, Monday, November 10th, we really don't have a whole lot of data, other than obviously this government shutdown ending is going to absolutely rally the market. I would be very surprised if it doesn't. Currently, the overnight on SPY is up 0.60%, so I'd be surprised if tomorrow's not some 1% type day. Now, with that said, there is the 3-year note auction at 1 p.m. That is very important because, we're all kind of watching the yields right now and seeing what's going on with that. Um, Even though the market is rallying and we are seeing some weight taken out of TLT in the overnight, we should still be seeing the yields in these auctions this week pulling down aggressively. Um, if they don't, then they'll be telling us, something else with the thesis of what's going on. Now, for Tuesday, Tuesday is Veterans Day, but there will still be trading available. You just won't be able to do like instant deposits and stuff like that because the banks are going to be closed. That's still going to be a banking holiday. So, take that for what it is. That just means that we won't be getting a lot of data, things like that. Anything you try to process on Tuesday is going to essentially be processed on Wednesday. So, Wednesday, we have some OPEC monthly reports. Those are just oil reports. We've been seeing oil pulling down in price pretty aggressively. So I don't personally read the OPEC reports, but for those that trade oil, that's important. Then we have Fed member Williams speaking at 9:20 a.m. Um, sort of what I always say about the Fed. Uh, each individual usually isn't going to be super, super key unless it's, like someone like Powell, who's obviously the speaking person for everyone. But listening to these individual Fed speakers who can have a little bit more of their own opinion on stuff, it is interesting. Sometimes some of the stuff they say, can be very important. Majority of it won't be, but it's good to at least keep a tab on what some of these Fed members are saying, just because sometimes it is really important what some of them say. Especially Fed member Williams, probably one of the more important Fed members who, do speeches or talking points, whatever. So that's at 9:20 a.m. Then Fed Waller speaking at 10:20, and then IEA, short-term energy outlook I don't care about. Fed member Bostic is speaking at 12:15 p.m. Then we have the 10-year note auction at 1 p.m. And that's going to be a very, very, very important auction because many people, including myself, are expecting this to start pulling down towards the 3.9%. Um, the other side of the coin expects this to start basically pulling up all the way up to the 5.2% again. Which to me that's pretty insane. That would require some massive, massive, massive leaps and bounds in inflation, which I don't think we will be seeing unless we get those $2,000 tax return, uh, cuts from the tariffs that President Trump potentially mentioned. But I'm not going to hold him to it because there's kind of been a lot of different money in a lot of different ways that have been promised over the last 11 months that we're very likely not going to see. And, from the Doge cuts, um, the tariff money, all sorts of stuff. So, what we see or not, you know, I will care when we actually have it in our mail and actually have it in our hands. But promises are promises, you know. For Thursday, we do have the CPI. I don't think this is going to be delayed or anything else. This is, the Fed should be back on track again. This should be on track unless they want to, again, delay it like they did last month to collect more data. It'd be totally reasonable if they do. But as far as I know, currently, the CPI will be on November 13th. We should be getting the initial and continuing jobless claims again, which that will be very, very important for the labor market as from the Challenger Gray report last week, the labor market is really, really, really deteriorating in a way that, um, the Fed and everybody is just not talking about. And we've been seeing that from many different company earnings. We've been hearing it from Target, McDonald's. Um, Different companies are doing layoffs like Amazon. Uh, you know, you could find it all over. And these are always the hallmark starts to what happens when major layoffs and everything really start occurring. Now, that could change if we had a massive spike back up in the actual economy, but I don't think that's occurring right now. And I know many like to tie the market to the actual economy itself, but you have to remember, the money in the stock market is literally in the pockets of the 1% of the 1%. It's really not spread throughout the majority. Now, I know everyone's 401ks and everything are doing very, very, very good, and that's an awesome thing. I love to hear that. But you just have to be careful when using the, I don't know, The stock market and the actual economy are two different things. You can have your economy doing not so great while the stock market is pushing all-time highs. And it's actually a very common trend that we will be pushing these all-time highs prior to some of the worst economic conditions that happen. And then not to really compare now to like, the whole 2008. But if you look at the actual headlines of the news readings back then, just prior to the whole 2008 crash, I mean, everybody was super, super bullish until the housing market started cracking. Once the housing market started cracking, some of that bullishness started to fade, but there was still surprisingly a ton of people very, very, very bullish up until the day that the stock market crashed. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the economics actually matter. Um, I feel like that's kind of the type of situation we're in, only except obviously it's much different. I'm not expecting some crazy stock market crash. Now, with that said, Thursday, um, again, we are going to be getting the CPI data, the jobless claims. I don't think the jobless claims will be delayed or anything at this point. That should just be an automatic reading where they just kind of pick up from the current. Uh, we will have the 30-year bond auction at 1 p.m. So that's going to be very, very, very key. We should see this non-farm productivity, the unit labor costs and everything at 8:30 a.m. So basically on Thursday, 8:30 a.m. and then the 1 p.m. time frame are going to be very, very, very important. Now on Friday, not a lot of data. We just have Fed member Bostic speaking at 9:20, and then at 12 p.m. we have the Atlanta Fed GDP. Now, the Atlanta Fed GDP, the last few readings, has still been picking upward. Um, Again, if we do get this tariff money kind of refunded back to people, then yeah, potentially we could see um, some inflation and everything picking up. But I know that the imports and exports have still been struggling. I know that even with some with the tariff deal, with China right now kind of being, I don't know the word right now. The truce right now within the trade war with China and the United States is paused. There's still just a lot of headwinds within the banking system. There's still a lot of headwinds within the labor markets. Um, you know, there's still just a lot of different headwinds that we still have to be very concerned about. So it's not like this is going to be some resurgence of all of a sudden the economy is going to be doing great and everything's flourishing and great. Um, Not so much the case, and I do think the bond auctions this week will highlight that a little bit. Now for the CPI, I do expect the CPI to come in cooler, especially with the government shutdown being in place for so long. I know that consumer spending and everything was, I don't want to say weak, but I know that consumer confidence came down quite a bit, especially just due to the government shutdown. So with that ending, with some of this more stressful stuff ending, that's going to be a good thing for consumers. That's going to be a good thing for, um, the economy overall. So we'll see how that plays out. Now that we're actually going to be getting data again, it will be, nice to see. But again, there was that Challenger Gray report, and I know there's many other different type of smaller reports that aren't, going to be a mirror of that, but they're very close in terms of saying that, yes, the economy is really struggling. Yes, labor, the labor market is really struggling. Yes, people are struggling to get jobs. So we'll see how this all works out. I won't ramble about it too much. And getting into the earnings for this week, nothing super exciting that I can see right off the bat. I do see some quantum. So let's go into this Monday open, nothing really important. Now the Instacart earnings for their guidance will be important just because of the whole labor market aspect, but in terms of the actual earnings, I don't really care too much. There is Rocket Lab in the close, CoreWeave, Rigetti, ASTS, Space Mobile. Played most of these. Big Bear, I did very well in Big Bear before. Some very nice earnings, nothing super huge, but these are all very good earning or very decent companies. They've all been doing very well for themselves, at least since I've last checked their charts. Tuesday, nothing really important. In the after hours though, there is Oklo, that is, the nuclear energy one. Very good company again. Their earnings, from what I've checked the last few times, have been doing very well. So good for them. Great company again. Wednesday, there is Circle in the open. I don't really care too much about that. Cisco in the afternoon. That's nothing to get some crazy deal, I don't think, but never can really count them out. They are part of the whole tech industry. On Thursday, there's Disney in the pre-market. And then the after hours, there's Applied Materials. Now that is a very important one. That's a semiconductor. Uh, there's RCAT. I know that they were doing pretty bad the last few days, and so far some of the dips being bought up, but potentially that could be a really nice play. Then after hours on Friday, there is Quantum Computing Inc. Really nothing too big this week. There is again just the Applied Materials on Thursday in the afternoon, but Oklo on Tuesday in the afternoon. But other than that, it's not like there's Nvidia or anything crazy going on. So a decent week to actually trade earnings. A lot of different, you know, companies that you could play cheap earnings on it and then make a lot of money on. But nothing like a Nvidia or something like that to really pull the market one way or another. Unless you see like Cisco set up some deal, or Applied Materials do something crazy. So
If you're enjoying this, please check out my Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can join our community chat and access our tools like the Unusual Whale Spot and our own personal GEX and DEX market positioning. My $12.99 premium tier gives access to my personal trades, 2 live classes a week, which are on Wednesdays and Sundays, and direct support from myself. The links to join are below, but you can also join through patreon.com/wooksy. Thank you for supporting me to help you build skills for a lifetime.
and getting into the technical analysis, as always, let's go ahead and turn on our moving averages and Bollinger Bands. Now, we are seeing a lot of buying in the overnight. Currently, the market price is up 0.66%. So the overnight price is at 675.40 when the market closed at 670.97. Now, this is a very key level that the market is actually sitting at right now. And that is essentially our 5 mile. So currently the 5 mile is at 675.49. On your screen, it might be showing 675. That's because with the close on Friday, it should actually pull the 5 mile down slightly. Even with the overnight buying upward, it should be around that 675 range, give or take. If it's above it, mark that down. If it's below it, obviously mark that down. It shouldn't be below it. It should be at or above it. But with the market in the overnight sitting essentially right at that level, it could mean that essentially it's testing the 5 mile for a move. And again, the 5 mile is tested generally every 5 days, so once a week. And from that 5 mile, you can have pretty major results, because generally the 5 mile is going to be what provides you the next big move. Because from this 5 mile test, either we're going to start pushing back up to the upper Bollinger and clearing this cup that I've been discussing in the last few videos to the upside again and basically buying all the way back up to the 690 range and then going into all-time highs into the 700s, or we're going to see a rejection at this 5 mile and we're going to continue seeing some downside. Um, and we do have to be careful though. The 5 mile and the 20 mile are starting to get pulled together quite a bit. And so potentially if we actually did have a strong rejection from this 5 mile, then that would mean that the market would be trying to target towards the lower Bollinger rather than just the 20 mile itself. Since they're not exactly at the same level, they are a few dollars apart, but they're getting very, very close. Okay. Um, a move down from here would further pull the 10 mile downward. The 20 mile is going to continue pulling upward very, very slightly, unless we see major continued selling to the downside. And if we had that selling continue for basically a whole 10 sessions, then we'd really start to see the 20 mile pulling down. But until that happens, the 20 mile is just going to kind of start, continue gliding upward very slowly. Now, with that said, I believe in Thursday's video, which I discussed for Friday, is that we were kind of expecting a buy back up to the 5 mile to retest that range and really solidify whether we're going to continue seeing that downside or not. Now, with the overnight buying and everything, we're doing just that. We're testing the 5 mile level, potentially on open if we keep testing that level. Again, this is kind of the perfect range to set up some dated contracts at, because either we're going to be pushing back up to that upper Bollinger or we're going to be pushing down to the lower Bollinger. There's really no in between on that. Either this market news is going to be huge fuel to buy up the entire selling, or the selling will continue. Okay. Now, with that said, I want to go ahead and turn off my moving averages and Bollingers and show the drawings for a moment. Now, I am going to delete this inverse head and shoulders. I can actually target that other. I'll have to target that one later. Now, we have been discussing how we broke through the buying channel potentially, and how we're now entering this consolidation channel. With the 5 mile being slightly above it, because the 5 mile is currently at the 675 range, that brings it about a whole $1.30 above that upper consolidation channel. If we have the buying occur from the 5 mile to the upside, that would be a bounce, and we would just extend the buying channel to this bottom support selling, and then it would basically take us up to the the buying in the cup all the way back up to the 690 range. Now, if we see the selling continue and we see this 675 range basically rejected, then that's going to be further solidifying that we're going to be trading within this consolidation channel, and that we should really anticipate going towards that lower Bollinger, which the lower Bollinger is slightly above where the bottom of this consolidation range is at. But if we start having selling towards the downside, we will see the lower Bollinger open up. Okay. Now, one thing I do want you to be aware of here, on the bullish side, and we're going to hide the drawings, is that the ADL has been very, very strong within the last two sessions. Um, Again, buying continuation from this 5 mile level is going to basically be all the liquidity the market needs for that 690 range. And seeing this bought back up within a few sessions would not be a surprise to me. Especially with the CPI and everything coming out. If we do have a cooler CPI again, that could help push the rate cut narrative further, where it would further price in the rate cut for December, and that would be again more fuel for the market very likely. So there's a lot of good news for the market. I would be surprised to see continued selling at this point, even though we are at the 5 mile. I know this video might have sounded very bearish, but my full expectation is that very likely we will go back up to the 690 range, all the way back up and push to the all-time highs. And from there, we'll just continue plotting it out. But it does look very bullish. Again, we'd have to have a major rejection from this level to tell us that we're not going to be buying from here. Uh, Now, again, I don't want to show drawings. I want to show the hourly chart here, because this is the type of buying you're seeing so far. Is that it's more of this candle right here, and that's a pretty decent overnight candle. Um, you know, there's a lot of reasons you could see these cups closing to the upside. For example, this cup at the essentially almost at the 680 range. That should be taken very, very easily. If there's any certain buying continuation from here, you'll see that range taken very quickly. And you'll know if there's buying or selling continuation because you just have to open the VVIX. Again, it's not the same as the VIX, it's the VVIX. This is more so a tool to monitor the actual uh, volatility within the VIX futures contracts. Um, if this is above 98, then that means that people are actively selling. If it is below that, then people are actively buying. And I usually look for the level below 88 to signify major buying, but it can be anywhere from that 96 range below. Uh, this would this is going to be a very good intraday tool to determine basically if what the market is doing from this 5 mile range. Because if you can determine that very, very clearly, you're going to make a lot of money this coming week. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at something really. Trying to get back to the SPY, but I am blind. There it is. All right. So I think we covered everything so far. Really didn't want to talk about a whole lot in this video. Not feeling very good as usual. Still doing my treatment. It's going to take a whole 9 weeks. Uh, but yeah, really what's important here is this 5 mile range. I really can't explain that enough. Either you're going to see major buying or major selling from this range. It's not the range to consolidate within, because if you have consolidation within the area we're at right now, that means that the 10 mile is going to pull down. The 20 mile is going to, start slowly pulling down, and that just turns things bearish regardless. So markets are sort of intended to continue buying upward. Either we're going to see this momentum from the government shutdown ending and everything else being good enough to take us back up to the 690, or we're going to have rejection all the way to the excuse me, towards that lower Bollinger range. Losing my voice tonight. Um, let's see. So I think that's going to be it for tonight's video. I wanted to go over TLT and stuff, but I think I just want to wait until we see basically what happens with the whole government shutdown thing tomorrow. And we see what the CPI data is this week. But in the overall scheme, I'm still extremely super bullish on TLT. It would take an entire narrative change to change that, so any sort of downside price action really isn't that big of a deal for me right now. Um, I'm not worried about the contracts for December really at all right now. Um, yeah, we'd have to see a major narrative change. Which again, that can happen this week depending on some of the news coming out, but we really just have to read through it all and make a a real decision based off of data and not just because the government's reopening. So, um, very likely that's why you're seeing this overnight selling in TLT is because some of this liquidity is being pushed back into tech, which is perfectly reasonable after seeing some of the selling that's been occurring over the last few days and just the government shutdown, um, being something that weighs on people's minds and everything. So some of this euphoric buying I fully anticipate. So we'll see where it really goes over the next few days, and we can really discuss what's going on in TLT and the Treasuries. But until then, um, really just try to be patient for a few days, unless we see some massive crash, which I'm not seeing. Okay, I'm not seeing that at all, but that's the only reason why I'd say is to sell any sort of treasury positions. But right now, everything is just perfectly golden. We just want to wait. Um, yeah, I think I'm going to end the video there. I hope everyone has a great trading day tomorrow. I'm very happy that the government is opening, even though it might be pushing down our TLT positions very slightly. I could care less. It's great that people are going to be getting paid again. It's great that people are going to be getting their benefits again. It's great that the government's going to be running again. So that's awesome. I'm very thankful of that. Besides that, um, we will discuss the whole macro of everything that's going on over the next few days. I have not been feeling good at all. Um, Not only have I been sick with everything that's been just going on with me needing my whole brain treatments and everything, but with also um my my daughter passed home a little flu, so my wife and daughter are fine, but I've been just dying of coughing and everything, so that's why my voice sounds a little weak tonight. But other than that, I will get better. I will do better. Um, yeah. Uh, One other thing I want everybody to take a look at is everyone who's been loading into silver and gold with me. Our positions are doing super good overnight right now. Our silver is up quite a bit, and our gold is back over the 4,000 range. Um, Very happy about that. So, looking to see that gap really closed to the all-time highs, both on silver and gold. Very bullish on the precious metals right now. Um, I would be very surprised not to see that taken, especially with that double bottom right there. It's everything you want to see as a precious metal bull. So, okay, I'm gonna stop uh, rambling. Have a good night, everybody. Take care. I will talk to you all in tomorrow's video. Hopefully, we'll go over some more important stuff tomorrow, and I apologize that I feel bad all the time. So, take care. Talk to you tomorrow.